Hi everyone, A Funny Joke Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new D'Angelo record and the Vanguard, Black Messiah. D'Angelo is a multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, producer that hails from Virginia, and with this record right here, he is releasing his first album in just about 15 years. His previous two LPs, Brown Sugar and Voodoo, are credited as being two of the most artful and significant records in contemporary R&B. And with his debut LP, Brown Sugar, like many R&B artists in the mid-90s, D'Angelo was taking a lot of production cues from modern hip-hop, whether that be conscious hip-hop, jazz rap, hardcore hip-hop. His second full-length album, Voodoo, even featured production from DJ Premier and features from Redman and Method Man. Other R&B artists that picked up sounds from hip-hop included R. Kelly, Aaliyah, Lauryn Hill. Artists like this were drifting away from the live instrumentation and the blatant funk and rock influences that dominated a lot of R&B music in the 70s and some of the recent hitmakers' music in the 80s too. People like Rick James and Michael Jackson and Prince. Again, all of whom released great music in the 80s, which there were still R&B artists that were working with drum machines and samples and synth sequences then too, like Keith Sweat, Janet Jackson. But what this crop of newer R&B artists in the 90s represented was something smoother, something sleeker, sexier. The grooves alone on a record like Brown Sugar make it auditory erotica. This feeling was enhanced on D'Angelo's next record, Voodoo, especially when it came to singles and music videos for tracks like Untitled, How Does It Feel? But simultaneously, D'Angelo delivered tracks that moved beyond the baby-making stereotypes that were usually tagged onto R&B music. And that's because he was just a generally good songwriter if you observed his compositions outside of the style that he was writing them in. Now, aside from some collaborations and live performances, D'Angelo has been pretty silent in the years between this album and his last full-length LP, which could have to do with some personal problems, not really being able to navigate his newfound fame after Voodoo came out. For years, there have been rumors of a new album coming down the pipe, and from what I understand, some of the recordings or writing on this new LP here might date back as far as the early 2000s. But the time frame of the creation of this record really seems kind of meaningless because the music itself just feels like it's coming from such a different place than Voodoo. And consistently so. There is a lot more live instrumentation on this record. The instrumentation feels really loose. The vocals are way freakier on D'Angelo's previous stuff, especially his first full-length LP. I saw his singing style very much as being in the archetype of 90s R&B. But on this new LP here, he is just using some wild inflections and really playing up the kind of nasally tone his voice has always had for some pretty weird but usually sweet and soulful results. And there are some incredibly strange grooves on this record too, especially on tracks like 1000 Deaths, which features some really oddly mixed instrumentation, booming drums, really tense bass line, mashed together with some drowned out synthesizers, stacked vocals, buzzing guitar leads, all coming together in a really beautiful cacophony. This track feels kind of fuzzy, lo-fi, sleazy, and psychedelic, a feeling that also moves on to tracks like the Charade. This kind of vibe, I'm surprised more of these alternative R&B artists today haven't sort of gone down this road. And it's like D'Angelo is also spitting in the face of the very synthetic feel that R&B has taken on over the past few decades as it's drifted away from greats like Stevie Wonder. So there are some experimental characteristics of this new record, but there's something kind of old school about it too. As D'Angelo embraces more live instrumentation on this LP, the more he also embraces a big influence from people like Prince. And as he wears this influence on his sleeve, D'Angelo reaches new levels of eccentricity and I think creativity. There are some interesting lyrics on this LP, songs that deal with love, maybe some more personal issues and back history like Back to the Future, other songs that speak more in terms of religion or societal issues, existentialism, and there are a lot of very great musical moments across this LP too, a lot of highlights, like the album's very rough and gutsy opening tracks, or the fantastic lead single from this thing, Sugar Daddy. A track that groove-wise is very smooth and funky like a cut off of Voodoo, but the kind of freaky backing vocals and just the overall peppiness of the instrumentation really set this song apart. And with this track, D'Angelo essentially establishes the idea of the song, and then together with the backing instrumentation explores the groove of the track. And this is the formula of many a song on this record, which isn't too odd considering that D'Angelo in the past has been no stranger to 5, 6, or 7-minute tracks. Occasionally there's a track on here or two that feels more like just a groove or a motif or just some funk than it is a song, kind of like tracks like Back to the Future Parts 1 and 2 and Prayer, but these songs are still enjoyable for the most part. I also love other tracks on here like The Door, which feels like this acoustic backwater blues funk fusion, and the song Another Life, which is the closer of the record and has this really grand instrumental presentation and feels like it pulls a lot from gospel music. And I gotta mention the intro to Really Love, which has this amazing Spanish guitar performance, some really somber strings, but the track eventually settles into some really soft, gentle balladry, and I love how much this song and other songs on here too do with so little volume. This track and many others on here aren't really going to seem like a lot on the surface because they're either going to be a little messy, cacophonous, just mixed really strangely, instrumentation just sort of drowning itself out, or they're going to be incredibly subtle. But if you push beyond that with either some headphones or a great stereo system, because this is not a laptop speakers record, you're going to be doing this album an injustice if you just listen to it on your laptop speakers. Once you move beyond the surface groove of each track, there are some great instrumental details and melodies and lyrics on this thing too. Overall, I think this is a fantastic record. I think this album was worth the wait. I wish we didn't have to wait for it as long as we did. I wish there were people like D'Angelo, people who are as artful and as creative and as eccentric and as adventurous as he is, just a little more active in the current state of R&B, and I think the fact that people responded to this record so positively once it just sort of dropped out of the blue is sort of proof of how much we need people like him in the genre right now. And on top of all that, it's a fantastic finish for the year of 2014. I'm feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Lists are coming up right after this video. Had to review this album because I wanted to put it in my favorite albums list. Cool? Cool. Anthony Fantano, D'Angelo, Black Messiah, forever.